Yep. You really thought this weekend was going to be some kind of reconciliation trip, didn't you? Ryan and I have been planning this for weeks, and you walking in here like you own the place is just the cherry on top. You have no idea how much we've had to put up with your constant help and your little lectures about money. Every time you helped with my business, you were just making sure we stayed dependent on you. It's time you heard the truth from someone who actually cares about this relationship. Hi, my name is Lauren Mitchell. I am 33 years old. I stood in the middle of the rented lakeside kitchen in northern Wisconsin, the kind of place people book for quiet autumn weekends when they want to pretend their lives are simple. The air still smelled like the cinnamon rolls Taylor had pulled from the oven an hour earlier. My best friend of 12 years had just finished delivering those lines with the same calm tone she used when she asked me to review her quarterly taxes. Ryan, my boyfriend of 3 years, stood 2 steps behind her arms, crossed, staring at the floorboards like they might open up and swallow him. The words didn't hit all at once. They landed one after another, each one sharper than the last, until I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. I had driven 4 hours from Chicago thinking this was Taylor's idea of mending fences. She had texted 2 weeks ago saying the three of us needed a reset, no phones, just the lake, and some good wine. I had even taken Friday off work, something I almost never did, because part of me still believed that showing up mattered. Taylor and I had met in college when we were both broke and ambitious in opposite directions. She was the one who could turn a sketch into a sellable product overnight. I was the one who could make the numbers behave. When she launched her small online jewelry line during our senior year, the bookkeeping was a disaster. I offered to set up a simple system. It was supposed to be a one-time favor. 12 years later, I was still the person she called when a vendor invoice didn't match or the bank wanted projections she didn't know how to make. Ryan entered the picture later. He was charming in a low-effort way, worked in marketing for a regional brewery, and fit into our little trio without friction at first. The three of us did the usual things: weekend dinners, bad horror movies, one trip to Door County, where we all got sunburned and laughed about it for months. Somewhere along the way, the dynamic shifted. Taylor's requests stopped being occasional and started arriving with a soft layer of guilt wrapped around them. I hate to ask again, but if I don't get this straight before the craft fair, I'm going to lose the booth fee. Ryan said, "You're the only one who can explain this to me without making me feel stupid. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're basically family at this point." I kept saying yes because that is what you do for the person who knows every version of you. I told myself it was temporary, that once her business stabilized, she would need me less. Instead, the business grew and the asks multiplied. I started staying late at my own job to catch up on the work I had pushed aside to fix her spreadsheets. My own clients noticed. My boss started asking quiet questions about my focus. I never told Taylor or Ryan how much it was costing me because I didn't want them to feel bad. The invitation to the lakeside house had felt like a sign that maybe they had noticed too. Taylor's text had been warm, almost apologetic. "We've been weird lately and I hate it. Come up Friday. We'll cook, drink too much, and actually talk like we used to." I packed the good wine and a folder of updated projections I had finished at 2 a.m. the night before, just in case she wanted to look at numbers. I told myself I was being helpful, not pathetic. When I arrived, the house was already warm and smelled like wood smoke. Taylor hugged me a second too long. Ryan kissed my cheek and then immediately busied himself with the fire. Dinner was fine on the surface. We talked about the leaves changing, about a new coffee shop that had opened near Taylor's apartment, about nothing that mattered. I kept waiting for the moment she would bring up whatever had been bothering her. Instead, she waited until the dishes were cleared and the fire was crackling, and then she started talking, like she had been waiting for this exact stage. The 5 lines she delivered were not the worst part. The worst part was how practiced they sounded. She had clearly gone over them in her head, maybe even with Ryan. Every sentence landed exactly where she wanted it to land, right in the soft spot between my ribs, where I kept the belief that my help had been wanted instead of tolerated. I felt my shoulders pull back before I even decided to move. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "You could have just said you wanted space. You didn't have to turn it into a performance." Taylor's mouth tightened at the corners the way it always did when she was about to double down instead of back off. Ryan finally looked up from the floor. His face was pale under the warm lamplight. He opened his mouth like he might say something, then closed it again. That small silence told me more than any of Taylor's rehearsed lines. She took one step closer, the sleeves of her oversized sweater sliding down over her hands. You don't get to act surprised. You've been treating my business like it was a group project you got to grade. Every suggestion you made came with this look like you were doing us a favor we could never repay. Do you know how exhausting that is? I wanted to laugh, but the sound stayed stuck in my throat. Exhausting. That was the word she had chosen. The nights I had stayed up running scenarios so she wouldn't lose money on a bad wholesale order. The weekends I had driven across the city to meet with her accountant because she hated talking numbers. All of it reduced to me being exhausting. Ryan finally spoke, his voice quiet. Lauren, it's not that we don't appreciate what you did. It's just we need to figure things out on our own now. The way he said we made something inside me go very still. I had heard that tone before, the careful one people use when they have already decided something and are hoping you won't make a scene. I looked at Taylor and saw the same careful calculation in her eyes. They had practiced this too. Before I could answer, Taylor's phone lit up on the counter. The name on the screen was Sarah Klein. Sarah was the one mutual friend who had never quite fit into our trio. She and Taylor had known each other longer than I had, but they fought more than they talked. Sarah had texted me a few vague messages over the summer asking if everything was okay with Taylor and Ryan. I had brushed them off as Sarah being dramatic. Now the phone kept ringing and Taylor stared at it like it was a bomb she hadn't expected to go off in the middle of her speech. She reached for the phone thumb, hovering over the decline button. I watched her face. For the first time since I had walked through the door, she looked uncertain. That tiny crack in her performance was the first real thing I had seen all evening. The phone stopped ringing. A second later, a text notification appeared. Then another. Taylor's screen stayed face up on the counter between us. I didn't mean to read it, but the preview was right there in bold letters. Sarah, I can't do this anymore. She deserves to know what you two actually agreed to. Taylor snatched the phone and turned it over so fast the edge hit the counter with a sharp crack. The sound made all three of us flinch. Ryan's eyes went wide. Taylor's mouth opened and closed once like she had lost the next line in her script. I felt the floor tilt under me, not dramatically, just enough to make me aware that I was still standing in a stranger's kitchen holding a glass of wine I no longer wanted. The fire popped behind us. Outside, the lake was dark and flat under the early evening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a car drove past on the main road, the sound fading almost immediately. Taylor tried to smile, but it came out crooked. Ignore her. She's been drinking again. You know how she gets. Ryan didn't say anything. He was looking at the phone like it might ring again on its own. The silence stretched until it felt like another character in the room. I set my wine glass down on the counter, careful not to let it clink too loudly. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I had expected them to shake. Instead, I felt oddly clear, like someone had opened a window in a room that had been stuffy for years. Taylor was still talking something about how Sarah always exaggerated and how we shouldn't let one drunk text ruin the weekend. I stopped listening after the first sentence. I was watching the way Ryan kept glancing at the phone even though it was face down now. I was watching the way Taylor's fingers kept twisting the sleeve of her sweater. The text preview had been short, but it had done its job. It had cracked the version of the story Taylor had been trying to sell me. There was an agreement, something they had decided together and kept from me, something Sarah had been carrying and could no longer keep quiet about. I didn't ask what the agreement was, not yet. I just looked at my best friend and my boyfriend standing on the other side of the kitchen island like they were a united front I had somehow missed until this exact moment. The fire crackled again. The house settled around us with the small sounds old wood makes when the temperature drops. Taylor opened her mouth to keep going, but I raised one hand, not dramatically, just enough to stop her. My voice came out quieter than I expected, but it carried. I think I need to take that call. Her face changed. The careful calm she had worn all evening slipped for half a second, and underneath it, I saw something I recognized from years of watching her negotiate with difficult vendors. Fear, not the loud kind. The kind that comes when a plan you thought was airtight suddenly has a hole in it. Ryan took half a step forward like he might try to intercept me. Taylor's hand shot out and caught his wrist. The movement was small, but it was enough. They had rehearsed this part too. The phone on the counter stayed silent, but the text preview was still burned into the back of my eyes. Sarah had something to tell me. Something Taylor and Ryan had agreed to keep hidden. Something big enough that Sarah, who usually stayed out of everyone's business, had decided she couldn't carry it anymore. I didn't reach for the phone right away. I just stood there letting the weight of the last 12 years settle into the space between us. The version of our friendship I had been carrying was already cracking. The version they had been carrying was apparently already finished. And outside, the wind picked up off the lake and rattled the screen door once a small, impatient sound. Inside, none of us moved. The fire popped again. Taylor's phone stayed face down on the counter like a loaded gun we were all pretending not to see. I took one slow breath and let it out. Then I reached for the phone. I reached for Taylor's phone, but she moved faster, snatching it off the counter and clutching it behind her back like we were still in college fighting over the last slice of pizza. The gesture was so small and automatic, it almost made the whole thing worse. She had rehearsed the big speech, but the little reflexes were still the same. Give me the phone, Taylor. Her eyes narrowed into that familiar slit she used when a vendor tried to push back on pricing. It's nothing. Sarah's just being Sarah. You know how she gets when she's had a couple glasses of wine and nothing better to do. Ryan shifted his weight again, still not meeting my eyes. Lauren, maybe we should all sit down. This doesn't have to turn into a thing. The laugh that came out of me sounded wrong in the quiet kitchen. A thing. That's what we're calling 12 years of free financial work and 3 years of being the group glue a thing. Taylor's face flushed, but she didn't flinch. You're the one who made everything about you. Every suggestion, every correction, every time you stayed up late running numbers I never asked for. It was exhausting, Lauren. We were all exhausted. There it was again, exhausting. Like my presence had been a favor they were too polite to decline until they didn't need it anymore. I didn't fight her for the phone. I pulled my own out instead and opened the thread with Sarah. The earlier messages were still there, the vague ones I had brushed off as Sarah being dramatic. I typed fast, "What did you mean, call me right now?" The reply popped up almost immediately. "Sarah, I'm 10 minutes away. Don't let them talk you into anything until I get there. 10 minutes. She hadn't texted from her couch in the city. She had already been driving when she sent the first message. That explained the urgency. She had known exactly where this weekend was headed and had decided she couldn't stay quiet any longer. Taylor saw my screen and her whole posture changed. The calm she had worn like armor cracked for the first time. You're not seriously going to listen to her. She's been jealous of our friendship for years. She's probably half drunk and making shit up to cause drama. I looked at her, really looked. The same face that had once stayed up until 4 a.m. helping me pack when my lease ended without warning. The person who knew which coffee order I wanted before I said it. She was standing 3 feet away, trying to convince me that the friend who had driven through the dark to warn me was the problem. My chest felt tight, but my voice stayed steady. If she's making it up, you won't mind if I hear her out. Ryan finally spoke again, quieter this time. Lauren, please. We can explain everything. Just don't drag Sarah into it. This is between us. Between us, I repeated. The bitterness tasted sharp on my tongue. It stopped being between us the second you two planned my exit without telling me. Taylor opened her mouth, but my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Sarah's name filled the screen. I answered before either of them could move. Lauren, her voice was shaky but clear, like she had been practicing this too. I'm pulling up the driveway now. I didn't want to do this over text. Taylor made me swear I wouldn't say anything, but I can't keep carrying it. They've been meeting with that investor from Milwaukee for months. They used the cash flow numbers you ran to pitch him, and they told him you weren't part of the team anymore. Taylor said you'd understand eventually that you were too involved anyway, and it was better for everyone if you stepped back. Ryan went along with it because the guy wanted a cleaner equity split. They already signed something. I saw the email. when Taylor left her laptop at my place last month. The words landed like small, precise cuts. I felt my free hand curl into a fist at my side. Taylor had gone completely still. Ryan looked like the floor had tilted under him. If you've ever watched the people you trusted most rewrite years of quiet loyalty into some kind of burden they had to escape from type respect, in the comments. It's a particular kind of sting when the rewrite happens out loud and in front of you. Taylor lunged forward and grabbed my wrist, not hard, but enough to make me look at her. She's lying or exaggerating. We were going to tell you this weekend. We just wanted to do it in person away from everything so you wouldn't feel ambushed. The lie was so obvious it was almost insulting. They had chosen the most isolated place they could find, waited until I was already here with my bag unpacked, and then delivered the news like it was a gift. The talk had always been on their terms. Sarah's voice came through the phone again, faster now. "I'm at the gate. It's open. I'll be there in 30 seconds. She hung up. Taylor released my wrist like it had burned her. She stepped back, rubbing her palms on her jeans. For the first time all night, she looked like she had lost the next line in whatever script she and Ryan had written. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered every private text he had sent me over the past year asking for just one more favor on Taylor's behalf, using that soft, careful guilt that made saying no feel like I was the one being difficult. The sound of tires on gravel cut through the quiet. Headlights swept across the front windows. Sarah was here. Taylor's face hardened again. The mask slipped back into place so fast it was almost impressive. Fine, let her come in. You'll see she's just trying to stir shit up because she's lonely and has nothing better to do. I didn't answer. I walked to the front door and opened it before Sarah even knocked. She stood on the porch in a puffy vest over a hoodie, cheeks red from the cold, dry eyes locked on mine with the same guilty relief I had seen on people who finally put down something heavy they had been carrying too long. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I should have told you sooner." Behind me, Taylor's voice cut in sharp and sarcastic. "Oh, perfect. The cavalry arrives. Did you bring popcorn too, Sarah? Or are you just here to make sure Lauren feels properly betrayed?" Sarah ignored her and stepped inside. She looked at Ryan, then back at me. "They've been planning this since June. The investor is already reviewing the paperwork. They used your projections and your vendor list to make the business look more stable than it is." Taylor told him, "You were a consultant who was no longer available." Each sentence peeled back another layer I hadn't wanted to see. I felt the first real crack in my composure, a hot sting behind my eyes that I blinked away hard. I would not cry in front of them. Not yet. Taylor crossed her arms. "You're making it sound so dramatic. We were trying to protect you from the stress. You've been burning yourself out at work anyway. We thought if we handled the expansion without you, you could focus on your own life for once." The gaslighting was so smooth it almost worked. Almost. But Sarah was still standing there, and the texts were still on my phone, and Ryan still wouldn't look at me. I turned to Taylor. My voice came out low but steady. "You used me for years, and then you decided I was in the way." She didn't deny it. She just shrugged that same bitter little smile back on her face. "You made it easy. You never said no. You liked being needed." The sentence hit harder than the rest because there was truth in it, and she knew exactly where to aim. Sarah shifted by the door. "Lauren, if you want to leave, I can drive you back tonight, or you can stay at my cabin. It's small, but it's warm." Taylor laughed once short and ugly. "Of course." Run to Sarah. That's what you do when things get hard right. Find someone else to fix it for you. I felt my spine straighten. The emotional weight was pressing down, but under it was something sharper. Clarity. I looked at Ryan one last time. He still hadn't said a word in my defense. That told me everything I needed to know. Then I looked at Taylor, my best friend, the person I had trusted with every version of myself for more than a decade. "You don't get to rewrite this," I said. "Not anymore." I turned and walked toward the bedroom where I had left my bag. My hands were shaking now, but I kept moving. I needed to get my things. I needed air that didn't smell like wood smoke and carefully rehearsed lies. Taylor's voice followed me down the short hallway. "If you walk out that door, don't expect us to beg you to come back. We're done managing your feelings." The words were meant to land. They did. but they also made the next step easier. I zipped my bag and slung it over my shoulder. When I came back into the main room, Sarah was still by the door. Ryan had moved to the window, staring out at the dark lake like it might offer an escape. Taylor stood in the center of the room like she was daring me to make a scene. I didn't make a scene. I just walked past her to the door. Sarah opened it for me. The cold night air rushed in sharp and clean against my face. As I stepped onto the porch, Taylor called after me one more time, her voice carrying that same sarcastic edge she had used all evening. Text when you get home safe. If you still want to be friends after you calm down. I didn't turn around. I didn't answer. Sarah followed me to her car. We didn't speak until we were inside and the engine was running heat, blasting against the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. She glanced at me in the dim light from the dashboard. You okay? I wasn't. The breakdown was starting quiet and heavy, the kind that comes when the last thread you were holding finally snaps. But I nodded anyway. Just drive, I said. As we pulled away from the house, I saw Taylor standing in the doorway, backlit by the warm light inside. She looked smaller than she had all night, or maybe I was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Ryan. Ryan, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop her. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down and watched the dark trees slide past the window. The lake house disappeared behind us. The weekend I had thought might fix things had ended in under 2 hours. And somewhere in the quiet between the trees and the road, I felt the first real fracture in everything I had believed about the people I trusted most. The drive to Sarah's cabin was quiet except for the low hum of the heater and the sound of leaves crunching under the tires. I kept my phone face down on my lap. Every time it buzzed, I felt the pull to look, but I didn't. Not yet. The trees thinned out as we got closer to the smaller rental Sarah had taken for the month, the kind of place with a sagging porch and a wood stove that smelled like pine and old smoke. When we pulled up, Sarah killed the engine and sat for a second without moving. You don't have to talk about it tonight if you don't want to. I nodded. Words felt too big and too small at the same time. We went inside. The cabin was small and warm in the way only places with thick blankets and mismatched chairs can be. I dropped my bag by the couch and sat down hard enough that the old springs creaked. That was when the breakdown finally came all the way through. It wasn't loud. No screaming, no throwing things. Just a slow, heavy unraveling that started in my chest and worked its way out. My shoulders shook and the tears came hot and steady, the kind that make your throat raw and your eyes feel swollen before you even realize you're crying. I wasn't mourning the friendship exactly. I was mourning the version of myself that had believed being needed was the same thing as being wanted. All those nights, I stayed up running numbers so Taylor wouldn't lose money on a bad order. All the guilt-laced texts I answered at 11 p.m. because saying no felt like failing the one person who had been there through every version of my life. She had turned my help into proof that I was the problem the moment I stopped providing it on demand. Sarah sat across from me with a box of tissues and didn't try to fix any of it. She just stayed in the room. That was more than I had gotten from the people I had called my best friend and my boyfriend for years. I let her do it, I said when I could talk again. My voice sounded scraped, raw. Every time she said she couldn't do it without me, I believed her. I liked being the one who could fix it, and she knew that about me. Sarah nodded quiet. She used it. Ryan went along because it was easier than pushing back on her. Taylor because she hated feeling like she owed anyone anything. The sarcasm came back on its own, bitter and automatic. Of course she did. Taylor always hated feeling like she owed anyone. So, she rewrote the story until I was the controlling one who wouldn't let her grow. We sat there until the wood stove burned low. I thought about the small routines that were already gone. The Sunday morning text from Taylor about whatever crisis had popped up overnight. Ryan calling on his lunch break to run something by me because I was supposedly better at the practical stuff. The group chat that would now either stay silent or fill up with whatever version of events Taylor decided to tell the people we both knew. The space where they had lived in my daily life felt huge and empty at the same time. The next morning, the sun came through the small windows, thin and cold. I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and my phone still face down on the coffee table. Sarah was in the kitchen making coffee. She glanced over when I sat up. "You don't have to check it yet," she said. "I know, but I picked it up anyway." There were 2 texts from Ryan that I deleted without reading, one from Taylor that I didn't even open, then an email notification from an address I almost didn't recognize. It was from Taylor's account subject line blank. When I opened it, the body was short and careful. "Lauren, I didn't mean for it to come out like that last night. Here's the pitch we sent so you can see we weren't trying to hide anything. Just don't make this bigger than it needs to be." Attached was a forwarded email chain. The top message was from Taylor to Mark Sullivan, the investor from Milwaukee. It included my old cash flow projections, the vendor list I had helped her build over years, and a note in Taylor's own words at the bottom. "These are from our old consultant. She's no longer involved. We can use these as baseline and move forward without the extra layer." The extra layer was me. I read the chain twice. The timestamps were from 3 weeks before the invitation to the lake house. They had already decided. The weekend had never been about fixing anything. It had been about delivering the news on their terms in a place where I couldn't easily leave or call anyone who would take my side without context. Sarah saw my face change and came over. When she read the email over my shoulder, she swore softly. She forwarded it to you by accident or on purpose to cover herself. Either way, now you have the proof. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't forward it to anyone. I just saved the screenshot, then did what I should have done the first time the asks started feeling like obligations instead of friendship. I blocked Taylor's number. I blocked Ryan's. I archived the group chat. I sent one short message to my boss, Patricia Lang, saying I needed a personal day and would catch up on the project by Monday. She replied with a simple, "Take the time you need." No questions, no guilt wrapped in concern. Then I texted my colleague, Marcus Hale, the one who had asked last month if everything was okay because I had been distracted at work. "I'm fine. Just dealing with some personal stuff. Thanks for checking in." He sent back a coffee emoji and nothing else. No pressure to explain, no rewriting of what had happened. The quiet after that felt enormous. No more Taylor texting at 8 a.m. with a quick question that was never quick. No more Ryan calling late because you're better at this stuff than I am. The space where they had taken up room in my day-to-day was empty, and it ached in a way I hadn't expected. Later that morning, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from David Ellis, the owner of the lakeside house we had left the night before. "Heard there was some tension last night. Neighbors mentioned raised voices. Everything sorted. Let me know if you need the place another night or a refund for the hassle." Sarah showed me the message. Even the property owner knew something had gone wrong. The fight had spilled out far enough to disturb the quiet the rental was supposed to provide. I didn't go back to the city right away. Sarah let me stay another night. We sat on the small porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the leaves fall onto the dark water. She didn't push me to talk about what came next. She just existed in the same space without asking me to fix anything or be anything other than wrecked. That night, I booked a session with my therapist, Dr. Lena Soto, for the following week. I had been meaning to for months, but had always put it off because Taylor needed me or Ryan had a crisis or work was busy. There was no one left to need me more than I needed myself. The days after blurred together. I went back to work, I met my deadlines, I ate meals at regular times, but the absence was constant. The group chat stayed silent. No one asked for my spreadsheets or my opinions on things that weren't mine to carry. The relief was real. So was the loneliness. One afternoon, 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Ryan using a new phone or a friend's line. "She's telling people you blew up over nothing and cut us off." I didn't correct her. I should have. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. I blocked the number too. The lesson settled in slowly, not as a lightning bolt, but as a quiet fact I kept returning to on the mornings when my phone stayed silent. My worth had never been measured in how much I could give or how long I could stay useful. Taylor had treated my help like a resource she could tap until it ran dry, then rewrite the story, so she was the victim of my control. Ryan had gone along because it was easier than choosing sides. I had gone along because I had confused being needed with being loved. Walking away didn't give me a victory parade or a dramatic apology. It gave me silence. It gave me my evenings back. It gave me the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the people who say you're family are the ones who will cut you out the moment you stop being convenient. and it gave me the choice to stop being convenient. I still miss the version of the friendship I thought we had. The easy texts, the shared history, the sense that someone had my back without keeping score. That version was never real for them. It was real for me, and letting it go hurt in a way that still catches me off guard on quiet Sunday mornings when my phone stays silent and there is no one left to need me for the things I used to give so freely. But I would rather have the silence than the slow erosion of being kept around only for what I could provide. That is the boundary I set. That is the cost I paid. And that is the choice I would make again. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to walk away from the person who treated your loyalty like something they could use up and discard, type respect in the comments. What helped you hold the line when everything in you wanted to fix it one more time?